Adella's 18th birthday was unlike any other. Usually, on this day, her home would be filled with a festive atmosphere, every corner sparkling with balloons and colorful lights. But this time, there were no preparations, no gift boxes in sight. A strange silence had gripped the house since morning, giving rise to an unknown apprehension in Adella's mind. Her adoptive parents, David and Sarah, who never failed to make this day memorable every year, now wore an unfamiliar sternness on their faces. As soon as breakfast was over, David called her and said, "Adella, get ready. We're going out." Adella looked up in surprise. "Where?" Sarah replied, "You'll find out later." There was a firmness in their voices that Adella had never heard before. She didn't dare to ask any questions. She quickly got ready, though her gut told her something wasn't right. The car sped away from the familiar city streets towards an unknown destination. Adella watched the scenery outside the window, but her mind was restless. David and Sarah were both silent, their faces revealing nothing. After about an hour, the car stopped in front of a massive building, Los Angeles International Airport. Adella's eyes widened in astonishment. "Airport? Where are we going?" David, taking her small suitcase from the car's trunk, said, "You are going." Adella's heart pounded. "Me? Where?" Sarah handed her an envelope. "Inside is your ticket. Havenwood." Havenwood. Adella had never heard of a town by that name in her life. Thousands of questions crowded her mind, but her adoptive parents' faces suggested they were not ready to answer. They led her inside the terminal, completed the boarding pass formalities. Adella followed them mechanically, her mind still unable to believe what was happening. Just before passing through the gate, David looked at her and said, "This is your gift, Adella." Sarah met her gaze and said, "Don't come back." 4 words. It was as if lightning struck Adella's head. Her world shook in an instant. A gift? Don't come back. On her 18th birthday, her adoptive parents were abandoning her like this. The parents who had raised her with so much love, who had fulfilled her every whim, were now sending her to an unknown town, where she knew no one. Adella's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to say something, but no sound came from her throat. David and Sarah didn't stay another moment. They quickly turned and left. Adella watched them go, as if in a nightmare. Looking at their retreating backs, Adella felt the greatest emptiness of her life engulfing her. She was alone. Completely alone. In an unknown city, with a one-way ticket in hand, and 1,000 questions in her mind, for which she had no answers. When Adella boarded the plane, her mind was like a turbulent sea. Her tears had dried, but in their place was a deep void and a host of questions. Havenwood. This name was completely unfamiliar to her. Why did her adoptive parents send her there? Why did they abandon her like this? These questions repeatedly swirled in her mind, but she found no answers. Through the plane window, she watched the cloud-covered sky. It felt as if she was leaving her familiar world and embarking on a journey to a new, unknown realm. This journey was not just about crossing geographical distances. It was a new turning point in her life, a journey towards a new identity. Havenwood's airport was small and quiet. When Adella disembarked, she felt as if she had arrived in a different world. The familiar hustle and bustle of Los Angeles were absent here. Instead, there was a calm, serene environment. Leaving the airport, she took a taxi. The taxi driver was an elderly man, with a simple smile on his face. "Where are you going, dear?" the driver asked. Adella showed him the address written on the ticket. "To this address." The driver looked at the address with a slight surprise. "Havenwood Bed and Breakfast. Are you new here?" Adella nodded. "Yes." The driver asked no more questions. The car sped along Havenwood's winding roads. Adella watched the scenery outside the window. Small houses, green trees, ponds, and fields, everything seemed new to her. The familiar concrete jungle of the city was absent here. Instead, there was a natural beauty. Havenwood bed and breakfast was on the outskirts of the town, in an old but beautiful house. Around the house was a garden where colorful flowers bloomed. When Adella reached the door of the bed and breakfast, an elderly woman opened it. She had a kind smile on her face. This was Mrs. Jenkins. "Where are you going, dear?" the driver asked. Adella showed him the address written on the ticket. "To this address." The driver looked at the address with a slight surprise. "Havenwood bed and breakfast. Are you new here?" Adella nodded. "Yes." The driver asked no more questions. The car sped along Havenwood's winding roads. Adella watched the scenery outside the window. Small houses, green trees, ponds, and fields, everything seemed new to her. The familiar concrete jungle of the city was absent here. Instead, there was a natural beauty. Havenwood bed and breakfast was on the outskirts of the town, in an old but beautiful house. Around the house was a garden where colorful flowers bloomed. When Adella reached the door of the bed and breakfast, an elderly woman opened it. She had a kind smile on her face. This was Mrs. Jenkins. "Who are you, dear?" Mrs. Jenkins asked. Adella introduced herself. "I am Adella. I'm supposed to stay here." Mrs. Jenkins led Adella inside. The bed and breakfast was clean and tidy, but furnished with antique furniture. Mrs. Jenkins showed Adella to a room. The room was small but comfortable. The garden outside was visible from the window. "You must be tired, dear. Get some rest," Mrs. Jenkins said. "I'll bring you some food." Adella was touched by Mrs. Jenkins's kindness. It felt as if there were people in this unknown town who were ready to help her. After eating, Adella lay down on the bed. Her mind was still restless, but Mrs. Jenkins's kind demeanor had brought her some peace. She tried to sleep, but her adoptive parents' last words kept swirling in her mind. Why did they abandon her like this? She had to find the answer to this question. The next morning, Adella woke up. Her mind was still heavy, but she knew she had to move forward. She left the bed and breakfast and started walking towards the town. Havenwood was a small town, but it had its own charm. Old houses, narrow alleys, small shops, everything seemed new to her. The townspeople were simple and kind. When Adella went to a shop, they looked at her with curious eyes, but there was no malice in their gaze. Adella tried to talk to them, but an unknown fear still lingered in her mind. She didn't know what awaited her in this town. Back at the bed and breakfast, Adella opened her suitcase. Her adoptive parents had given her a small box, which she hadn't noticed until now. The box was old, made of wood. Adella opened the box. Inside were a worn diary and a bunch of keys. The diary was old, its pages yellowed. Adella opened the diary. It was her birth mother's handwriting. On the first page of the diary was written, "The story of my life." Adella began to read the diary. It felt as if this diary might give her some information about her past. The diary contained some vague hints about her birth mother's life. Her childhood, her dreams, her love, everything was written there. Adella was surprised as she read. She knew so little about her birth mother. A name was repeatedly mentioned on the pages of the diary, Arthur. Who was this Arthur? A question arose in Adella's mind. This Arthur might be able to give her some information about her birth mother's past. Adella decided that she had to find this Arthur. Adella sat on the bed with the diary in her hand. Her mind was still restless, but every word in the diary brought her closer to her birth mother. The diary was a hidden part of her birth mother's life, which Adella had never known before. Her perception of her birth mother was completely different. She thought her mother was an ordinary housewife, who loved her family and did everything for them. But this diary was giving her another identity of her birth mother. I in the diary, her birth mother's childhood was written, the story of her growing up in the green fields, and by the lake of Havenwood. Her birth mother's dream was to become an artist, but due to family pressure, she had to abandon that dream. As Adella read, she felt that her birth mother, like her, had once dreamed, but that dream had not been fulfilled. Arthur's name was repeatedly mentioned on the pages of the diary. Arthur was her birth mother's dear friend, her companion in fulfilling her dreams. They painted together, wrote poetry, and dreamed of the future. Adella realized that Arthur had played an important role in her birth mother's life. On the last page of the diary, her birth mother had written, "I am leaving Havenwood, but my heart remains here. My dreams may not be fulfilled, but I know that one day my daughter will fulfill my dreams." Adella's eyes filled with tears. Her birth mother had dreamed so much for her. But why had she left Havenwood? Why couldn't she fulfill her dreams? These questions kept swirling in her mind. Adella decided that she had to find Arthur. Arthur might be able to give her all the information about her birth mother's past. She closed the diary and took the bunch of keys in her hand. The bunch of keys contained several old keys, which might open the lock of an old house. The next morning, Adella left the bed and breakfast in search of Arthur. She first spoke to the locals. Since Havenwood was a small town, everyone knew everyone. When Adella asked about Arthur, everyone recognized him. An elderly shopkeeper told Adella, "Arthur. He is the pride of our town. He is the caretaker of our old public library. You will find him there." Adella thanked the shopkeeper and started walking towards the public library. The library was on the outskirts of the town, in an old but beautiful building. Around the building was a garden where colorful flowers bloomed. When Adella entered the library, she was surprised. The library was filled with books, thousands of books arranged on every shelf. An elderly man was sitting at a table reading a book. He had a calm smile on his face. Adella realized that this was Arthur. Adella went up to him and said, "Are you Arthur?" Arthur looked up. There was a depth in his eyes. "Yes, I am Arthur. Who are you, dear?" Adella introduced herself. "I am Adella. My birth mother's name is..." Adella said her birth mother's name. A flicker of surprise appeared in Arthur's eyes. He kept looking at Adella, as if seeing the reflection of her birth mother in her eyes. "Your mother? She left Havenwood many years ago. Are you her daughter?" Adella nodded. "Yes. My adoptive parents sent me here. I want to know about my birth mother's past." Arthur asked Adella to sit in a chair. He looked at Adella and said, "Your mother was my dear friend. We grew up together, dreamed together. But for some reason, she had to leave Havenwood." An elderly man was sitting at a table reading a book. He had a calm smile on his face. Adella realized that this was Arthur. Adella went up to him and said, "Are you Arthur?" Arthur looked up. There was a depth in his eyes. "Yes, I am Arthur. Who are you, dear?" Adella introduced herself. "I am Adella. My birth mother's name is..." Adella said her birth mother's name. A flicker of surprise appeared in Arthur's eyes. He kept looking at Adella, as if seeing the reflection of her birth mother in her eyes. "Your mother? She left Havenwood many years ago. Are you her daughter?" Adella nodded. "Yes. My adoptive parents sent me here. I want to know about my birth mother's past." Arthur asked Adella to sit in a chair. He looked at Adella and said, "Your mother was my dear friend. We grew up together, dreamed together. But for some reason, she had to leave Havenwood." Arthur began to tell Adella about her birth mother's past. Her birth mother was the daughter of a prominent family in Havenwood. Her father was an influential businessman. Her birth mother loved an artist named Ethan. Ethan was an ordinary artist, he had no wealth. Adella's birth mother's family could not accept this relationship. They wanted to force her birth mother to marry another man. Adella's birth mother loved Ethan, so she rebelled against her family. She wanted to leave Havenwood with Ethan, but Ethan refused. Ethan thought he was not worthy of Adella's birth mother. So Adella's birth mother left Havenwood alone, leaving behind her dreams and love. Adella listened to Arthur in surprise. She didn't know so much about her birth mother. Her birth mother was a brave woman, ready to sacrifice everything for her love. Arthur gave Adella the address of an old house that her birth mother had left behind. This house belonged to your birth mother. She left it for you. Perhaps there you will find more memories of your birth mother. Adella thanked Arthur and left the library. Thousands of questions still swirled in her mind, but she knew she had to move forward. She had to find all the information about her birth mother's past. Following the address given by Arthur, Adella began to walk. Through the narrow alleys of Havenwood, she reached a secluded area. The house was on the outskirts of the town, beneath a massive oak tree. The house was old, dilapidated, its walls covered in moss. It looked as if no one had lived in this house for many years. But around the house, there was a strange attraction, as if a deep mystery was hidden within it. Adella stood in front of the house. In her hand was the bunch of keys that her adoptive parents had given her. She took out an old key from the bunch and tried to open the lock. The lock was old, rusty. After much effort, the lock opened. Adella carefully entered the house. Inside, it was dark, dusty, and filled with cobwebs. Adella turned on her mobile phone's flashlight and looked inside. The house was huge, but there was no furniture inside. Only some old boxes and broken items lay scattered. Adella explored each room. In every room, there was a strange silence, as if the house held many years of old memories within it. Adella entered a room. The room was small, but inside it was an old wardrobe. The wardrobe was made of wood, with some beautiful designs carved on it. Adella tried to open the wardrobe, but it was locked. She took out another key from the bunch and tried to open the lock. This time, the lock opened. Adella opened the wardrobe. Inside were her birth mother's old belongings, photos, letters, and another diary. Adella carefully took out the items. Her birth mother's old clothes, her jewelry, her handwritten letters, everything seemed precious to her. Adella picked up a photo. In the photo, her birth mother stood, a sweet smile on her face. Beside her stood a young man, with a depth in his eyes. Adella realized that this was Ethan, her birth mother's love. Adella began to read the letters. The letters were written between her birth mother and Ethan. In the letters, their love, their dreams, their sorrows, everything was written. As Adella read, she felt that her birth mother and Ethan's love was a deep, sacred love that had grown deeper with time. Then Adella picked up the second diary. This diary was a hidden part of her birth mother's life, which was not in the first diary. This diary contained detailed information about her birth mother's deep secrets, her love, separation, and Adella's birth. The identity of Adella's birth father was also mentioned here. In the diary, her birth mother had written that after leaving Havenwood, she could not forget Ethan. She knew Ethan loved her, but due to family pressure, she was forced to leave him. When Adella's birth mother left Havenwood, she was pregnant. She didn't know what to do. She went to a new city alone, where she knew no one. There she met David and Sarah. They were kind people. They helped Adella's birth mother. Adella's birth mother told them everything. They told Adella's birth mother that they would raise Adella as their daughter so that she could have a normal life. Adella's birth mother agreed, because she knew she couldn't raise Adella alone. Adella's birth mother had given Adella to David and Sarah, but she could never forget Adella. Every year on Adella's birthday, she would come to Havenwood and watch Adella from a distance. She knew Adella was happy with her adoptive parents, so she never came in front of Adella again. On the last page of the diary, her birth mother had written, "I know that one day Adella will learn about my past. I want her to find her birth father. Her birth father is an artist from Havenwood, named Ethan." Adella's eyes filled with tears. Her birth mother had done so much for her. She had sacrificed everything for her love, but she could never forget Adella. Adella felt that her birth mother was an extraordinary woman who could do anything for her love. Adella closed the diary. Thousands of questions still swirled in her mind, but she knew she had to move forward. She had to find her birth father. Adella left the old house with the diary in her hand. Her mind was still restless, but a new hope had awakened in her. She knew her birth father was an artist from Havenwood, named Ethan. She had to find Ethan. Adella went to Arthur again. Arthur was sitting in the library reading a book. Adella told him everything, about her birth mother's diary, about her birth father. Arthur was surprised to hear Adella's words. "Ethan. He still lives in Havenwood. But he is now ill and living a lonely life." Adella asked, "Where does he live?" Arthur gave Adella Ethan's home address. "He lives on the outskirts of the town, in a small house. He no longer paints, he just lives alone." Adella thanked Arthur and started walking towards Ethan's house. An unknown fear still lingered in her mind. She didn't know how Ethan would receive her. Would he recognize her? Would he accept her as his daughter? Ethan's house was small but beautiful. Around the house was a garden where colorful flowers bloomed. When Adella reached the door of the house, her heart pounded. She knocked on the door. After a while, an elderly man opened the door. There was a deep sadness on his face. His hair was white, and there was a depth in his eyes. Adella realized that this was Ethan. Adella said to him, "Are you Ethan?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, I am Ethan. Who are you, dear?" Adella took out a picture of her birth mother. "My birth mother's name is..." Adella said her birth mother's name. "Look at this picture." Ethan took the picture in his hand. A flicker of surprise appeared in his eyes. He kept looking at the picture, as if seeing the reflection of her birth mother in his eyes. His hand was trembling. Is she still alive?" Ethan asked. Adella shook her head. "No. She passed away." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Adella and said, Are you her daughter?" Adella nodded. "Yes. I am your daughter." Ethan embraced Adella. There was a mixture of joy and sorrow in his eyes. He led Adella inside. They both sat in silence. No words were exchanged between them, but there was a deep love in their eyes. Ethan told Adella about her birth mother, about their love, about their separation. He told Adella that he could never forget Adella's birth mother. Every year on Adella's birthday, he would go to Adella's birth mother's old house and reminisce about her. Adella listened to her father. It felt as if her father, like her, had been living a lonely life. They both had lost the people they loved. Ethan showed Adella his paintings. In his paintings were the reflection of her birth mother, his love, his dreams. Adella was surprised to see her father's paintings. Her father was an extraordinary artist. Adella decided to start a new relationship with her father. She knew her father loved her, and she loved her father too. They both wanted to leave their past behind and start a new life. Adella and Ethan's reunion sparked a new discussion in the small town of Havenwood. Arthur was delighted to hear this news. He was happy to see Adella and Ethan together. He knew Adella's birth mother would also have been happy to see them together. Arthur invited Adella and Ethan to his house. They sat together, drank coffee, and talked. Arthur explained to Adella and Ethan the reason for her birth mother leaving Havenwood. He said, "Your birth mother loved Ethan, but her family could not accept this relationship. They wanted to force your birth mother to marry another man. Your birth mother wanted to leave Havenwood with Ethan, but Ethan refused. Ethan thought he was not worthy of your birth mother. So your birth mother left Havenwood alone, leaving behind her dreams and love. Ethan nodded. Yes, I made a mistake. I thought I wasn't worthy of her. But I didn't know she was pregnant. Adella listened to her father in surprise. Her birth mother had sacrificed so much for her. It felt as if her birth mother was an extraordinary woman who could do anything for her love. Arthur told Adella about the role of her adoptive parents. When your birth mother left Havenwood, she was pregnant. She didn't know what to do. She went to a new city alone, where she knew no one. There she met David and Sarah. They were kind people. They helped your birth mother. Your birth mother told them everything. They told your birth mother that they would raise you as their daughter so that you could have a normal life. Your birth mother agreed, because she knew she couldn't raise you alone. Adella felt that her adoptive parents also loved her. They had raised her at her birth mother's request, so that she could have a normal life. Their act was another form of love. Adella felt forgiveness and gratitude towards them. Adella decided to start a new life in Havenwood with her birth father and Arthur. She knew this town was her real home, where she had found her roots. She found an interest in art from her father and began to learn painting from him. Arthur became her guide and family member. He told Adella many more stories about her birth mother, about her childhood, about fulfilling her dreams. Adella felt as if she had come closer to her birth mother. Adella contacted her adoptive parents. She told them everything, about her birth father, about her birth mother's diary. Her adoptive parents, David and Sarah, were delighted to hear Adella's words. They told Adella that they would always love her, and they were happy that Adella had found her real family. Adella felt that her life had taken a new turn. She was ready to leave her past behind and start a new life. It felt as if her birth mother would also have been happy to see her. Adella's new life began in Havenwood. She lived with her father in his old house. The house was old, but Adella and Ethan together renovated it. The garden bloomed with flowers again, and the house became vibrant once more. Adella began to learn painting from her father. Ethan was an extraordinary artist, his hands held magic. He gave Adella all his knowledge, taught her all his techniques. Adella quickly began to learn. Her paintings reflected her birth mother, her love, her dreams. Arthur often visited their house. He would tell stories to Adella and Ethan, and they would drink coffee together. He was her birth mother's dear friend, so he was like a family member to Adella. Adella became acquainted with the people of Havenwood. They loved her, helped her. Adella felt that this town was her real home, where she had found her roots. One day, Adella was sitting with her father, painting. Ethan looked at Adella and said, "Your birth mother would have been happy to see you, Adella. You have fulfilled her dreams." Adella's eyes filled with tears. She embraced her father. She knew her birth mother loved her, and she loved her birth mother too. Adella felt that her life had found completeness. She was ready to leave her past behind and start a new life. It felt as if her birth mother would also have been happy to see her. This story was not just Adella's story. It was a story of family, secrets, and survival. It was a reminder that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you fail you completely, and sometimes the universe sends you exactly where you were always meant to be. Adella found her interest in art in Havenwood, and began to learn from her father. Arthur became her guide and family member. Adella found her roots, created her identity. A bright future awaited her in Havenwood, where she was ready to fulfill her dreams. Adella's life was a long journey, an unknown path. But she knew that this path had led her to her true identity and love. Family is not just about blood relations, it is a bond of souls. Adella felt this truth, and she was ready to start her new life.